Well, Cleveland itself at this very hour is the site of high tension. At this moment, you're looking at these live pictures where Cleveland is bracing for a wave of protests, so far very peaceful. Activists are telling people to, quote, be on the streets downtown. The protests center around a grand jury that cleared the police officer responsible for fatally shooting 12-year-old Tamir Rice, who was holding a toy pellet gun that did look very real. But as we keep our cameras trained on the Justice Center, which, if you don't know Cleveland, it's on Ontario Street, not far from the football stadium where the Browns play, we're going to bring in Rod Wheeler. He investigated homicides for the D.C. Police Department and is currently the founder and president of the criminal investigation firm Rod Wheeler and Associates, and here exclusively Joe Cordero. He's got a track record of reducing crime in cities throughout Massachusetts and New Jersey. He's an expert in building bridges between law enforcement and the community. He's also spent 21 years with the NYPD. Welcome to you both. Rod, I want to go to you first. In the wake of Ferguson, Baltimore, Chicago, all of these sites of tension, is Cleveland ready?
You know, I think Cleveland is ready. And let me just share with you real quickly, Liz, that I was born and raised in Cleveland, and a lot of those protesters I actually personally know. And I think they are within their right to protest. You know, Liz, when you look at this particular case involving Tamir Rice, there's no way in the world that that police officer should not have at least been taken to a trial. And he wasn't even indicted. And I think that's where the tension comes in. I'm not saying the officer was guilty, but at least take him to trial. Liz, I've investigated shootings involving police officers. And let me just tell you firsthand, with firsthand knowledge, many years of being in law enforcement, every element of this case at least shows that this individual should have been indicted. That did not happen. And why didn't that happen? Because that prosecutor, Tim McGinty, wanted to sway the jury, the grand jury. And that's what happened. And that's why, Liz, we see those people protesting, and like I said, rightfully so, in the city of Cleveland.
Well, listen, it's America, and you can protest these things, absolutely. But I want to bring in Joe Cordero, who you've really been an expert in bridging very major rifts where there have been painful wounds between community and police, and this is very well one of them, correct? How do they work on this? How do they fix this situation?
Well, you know, this is overshadowed by, you know, the national tempo right now as it relates to police-community relations in light of, you know, a number of police-involved shootings. So, you know, aside from the criminal case, this drama is not ending anytime soon. You have probably a lawsuit, you have an administrative investigation.
But for right now, and these people on the steps of the Justice Center here in Cleveland, is there a paradigm that is perhaps appropriate to bridge a very, very massive wound right now between this gap between the community and the police at the moment?
Absolutely. And part of that is accountability. It's showing the community that the police are accountable, that there's a mechanism and trust in place that they can trust to conduct, investigations that people can rely on. So part of that is, bringing people together, explaining to them the process, explaining to them what the police department aims to do to bridge the gap of trust right now in that community.
Rod, there have been what feel like so many of these, but you know, in the grand scheme of things, we'll talk about the numbers in a minute. But there's, of course, Tamir Rice in Cleveland. We have the Eric Garner Staten Island shooting, where you know he was down there. It was a horrible situation. That too was caught on tape. Laquan McDonald, 17-year-old, shot 16 times. He had a knife in Chicago. We know how tough those situations, and of course Ferguson too. In some cases justified, in others questionable, and in others it was, well, what do you expect? You're waving a weapon around.
You're right. And, you know, that's why, Liz, we try to be fair and balanced on this network. And, you know, 99% of the time, I'm going to support police officers because I've been out there on the street and I know what we have to deal with each and every day. However, there's this 1%, Liz, and I know my co-panelist, Joe, will agree with this. There's this 1% of police officers that's really making it look bad for all of us. 1% is that one guy in Cleveland, that police officer. But I'll tell you, on the other side of this, Liz, when you look at what's going on in the city of Chicago with Rahm Emanuel, he's not making situations there any better either. He throws his cops under the bus. The Baltimore mayor, as we know, threw those 6 cops under the bus. So my question, Liz, becomes this. Where does it end? How do we bridge the gap between the police departments and the community? And unfortunately, I'm going to tell you, going forward into 2016, it's not looking that great.
I think that's an important point to be made, Joe, and as you look at exactly what's happening on your screen, everybody, right now it looks very peaceful. Things tend to get a little more dicey when the sun goes down. I'm not saying that's going to happen here, but what next, Joe? What is the number one thing? Rod just made the point that Rahm Emanuel threw his police under the bus. He fired the police chief. But is there a case where sometimes you need to start fresh at the top?
Well, if you look at situations in Chicago and elsewhere, it really calls for a significant change in the policing direction. And when that happens, it's appropriate to start at the top. But I got to also say this, this is just one of many, unfortunate situations that, been talked about here just a minute ago. And we tend to come up with agreed upon approaches and solutions that we quickly abandon after the spotlight ends on a particular city. We need to move forward in a way that makes bridging the divide among our communities part of a policing culture. We need to measure it like we measure crime statistics. We need to emphasize it as we do arresting bad guys, which is an important part of policing. But also being able to sustain the trust, to build bridges, and so that when you have these types of situations, you could take a step back collectively and have, people come together and try to work this out a little better.
Well, as protests go, this is not a huge one. I can remember working at Channel 5 in Cleveland. Rod, I lived in Cleveland too, like you did, and
really?
Right around the time of the Rodney King police beating verdict, I was right there on those very steps covering a different protest. It was a lot bigger. We'll be watching it. Our cameras are there. We want to thank both of you so much for weighing in on this with very measured thoughts and feelings. We appreciate it.